high ethical standards, of working. The company had achieved a great reputation and had received very many awards for its outstanding work in the areas of law and intellectual property. Okay. However, one day, Andrew Lewinsky, who was a firm co-founder and partner, received news that David, if you remember, David is an employee who was very nice, very trusted. Yeah. And when informed that David had committed a fraud in his company, David had found a loophole in the power of attorney from one of the clients that they had. So what did David do? So David, using the loophole, he illegally sold shares of the client in a Canadian company, and David made almost $110 million pounds in the fraud. Can you imagine the shock that Andrew got? To imagine that such a thing could happen in his organization. It was also very unfortunate because they do not have any insurance to cover this kind of activity, because they believed that all the employees had embraced the good values. So they didn't have an insurance. So that means all this was a loss to the company. So after this, you can imagine the kind of questions that came up in the face of such a fraud. And some of the issues that came up, for one, people would ask themselves, what plan of action should be taken to save the law firm in this time of crisis? Because that was a big crisis. You can imagine registering a loss of 110 pounds. That is not little money. And what would be the impact would this fraud have on the 600 plus lawyers and other employees in the company? It's a big fraud. It was all over. So what is the impact? How would the reputation of the organization be impacted by this fraud? All the trusted customers who voted for them, who enabled them get those awards, after they get to know about that fraud that David caused, how are they going to react, and what would be the impact once the news go out there to the clients? So because there's an impact. Further, what would the clients lose trust in the organization, ethics and integrity, and break all businesses ties with the company? Because like we saw earlier, the ethics and the integrity that the company had are the ones that had made clients believe in them. Clients have trust in them. But now they're involved in a great fraud. How will that impact? What will the client think about? Would this breach of trust ruin the firm's reputation in Canada and abroad? Because like we said, they had customers, they had clients all over the world. So what would this mean? Would Lewinsky and Skeller survive this crisis and remain financially stable? A question that the organization will be asking themselves. We don't have an insurance. We've registered such a loss. Are we going to continue being financially stable? And finally, what can Lewinsky do for the client whose shares had been used for the fraud theft by the employee called David, who was well trusted? So all of these questions are the kind of questions that we'll be asking ourselves, whereby as an organization or whereby we as leaders do not embrace the ethical leadership. So this is just an intro, and now we get to the gist of the training for us to understand what is all this about ethics, what is all this about ethical leadership. And from what we can pick from the case study that we've gone through is that ethical is not only important, but also crucial in any business. Because you can have the ethics, but it is very crucial for the survival of a business. And we're told a business is led by a leader. So if this leader has no ethics, then you can only imagine the impact that it can have. As we've seen in our case study, David, who was a key leader, and he just got into some unethical practices, and that cost the organization a big deal. So ethics should be integrated in the basic day-to-day working of each and every employee of the organization. And it's supposed to be embraced. It should not be like in a short term. It is something that you should live with And that is what we want to see. How can we do? What can we do to ensure that we achieve that? So one of the other things that we need to remind ourselves is the higher you go in an organization, it becomes very critical that you have ethical leaders. Because if you have unethical leaders at the top, we are told, lead and we follow. So imagine if you're very unethical up there, what will your followers do? Your followers will embrace the unethical practices that you have shown them. Because we as leaders, our role is to lead and others, and we guide. So if you don't have the ethics, the ethical leadership aspect in yourself, then how can you lead? You're just going to lead people into unethical practices. So if the leaders themselves are not ethical, the organization cannot expect to function on the lines of ethics and moral values. Very critical to note as we start this training, that if we as leaders are not ethical, then we'll be doing the justice to the organization. Because how do we expect it to function? And like an organization is like an entity, it's like a person. Yeah. So if we don't have ethics, so the people who are driving the organization vision, with the people who are driving the organization values, if we are unethical, then how do we lead? Yet we've been trusted with that great responsibility. And we've also been trusted in empowering others to be ethical leadership, because, we grow other people. So how do we do it? So with that, let us get to the gist of our training by getting to learn about this ethical leadership in details. And like I said earlier, as we started, as a reminder of our objectives, the objectives that we have, and we go to our first objective of explaining what is meant by ethical leadership. And ethical leadership, we can say it means using ethics. And I'm sure some people will be asking, normally the English teacher will tell you, don't use a word to define a word. But in this case, we want to use ethics. And as I go through the presentation, you'll get to understand exactly what ethics means. So ethical leadership means using ethics and making an ethical decision in situations that are faced by leaders. And you realize as a leader, these decisions you make almost every minute. Most of the times you're making these decisions. They may look simple, but you're always making them. And simple ethical decision is like even the timekeeping, it's an ethical decision. You decide, I've got to work early, I will leave early. I decide I go to the office, I want to be on my computer, browsing instead of working. So those ethical decisions are with us every day. We live with them. And what it means that we need them to keep in mind that when you're providing leadership and guidance, can we ensure that we have embraced them? Because if you don't, then we are preaching water, but drinking wine. Because we know ethical leadership will help you as a leader to make the proper ethical decision and be an ethical leader. Because if you don't embrace the principles of ethical leadership, you can't pretend. So today you'll pretend to be this, tomorrow you'll be that. So it's very important that we embrace the ethical leadership. Hence, we can say that ethical leadership is all about the intersection of ethics with leadership. How you marry the two. And like I said, it's almost everything that is done by a leader. And like we are told, a leader is not just in terms of hierarchy, but we are all leaders in our own selves. Because we lead our lives. And I tell people, even if you're at the lower level, you're also a leader of your life. You're a CEO of your own life, So we are all leaders in our own way. So let's not say that this is for the top people. No, we are all leaders in our own way. And there are many ways and many times when leaders are faced with very simple and straightforward decisions, which on the other hand are very risky with respect to ethics and ethical situations. It may look very simple, but the impact can be really massive. Hence, it's very crucial that we as leaders consider various ethical dimensions before making decisions. As you make a decision, ask yourself, is this ethical or unethical? Therefore, ethical leadership is very important to a person to develop as a leader and be successful in leading successively. All of us as leaders want to be successful in everything that we do. But one of the key elements for you to be successful as a leader is embracing the principles of ethical leadership. Because like I said, it's very simple. Ethics are very simple, yet the impact is too wide that you can't ignore it. You know, like they say, it's easier for the needle to get into a camel's, for a camel to get into a needle's hole as opposed to. So that is what it when we talk about ethical leadership. Ethics, you may not be, they're not very tangible, and most people ignore them. But the moment you embrace them, it is well seen by everyone, and especially if you are a leader. So we go to describing the importance of this ethical leadership. So what is the importance? We have embraced it. We are good ethical leaders. So why is it important? And like we looked at our case study, we realized that by David having to undertake an ethical practice, it cost the organization a big deal. So in this case, let's describe the importance of ethical leadership. One, we need to appreciate that, and if you allow me to read, is that ethical leadership is a must for all the leaders as well as employees in an organization. Like I said, ethical leadership is for everybody because we are all leaders in our own small way. Even the lady who makes the tea, even the security personnel who welcomes people to an organization is a leader in his own way. He's leading himself as a security personnel. So therefore, ethical leadership is supposed to be for everybody. In fact, we're told ethics are important not only for the professional front, but for not just for the professional, but for also the personal. You as yourself, and like I said, charity begins at home. You are your home as a person. So don't just look at ethics as that big thing that is being done in the organization, but also you as a personal person, as a personal. Right from the start of an industry and business, people have been concerned about the leaders and their ethics. And it has been told that the researchers have found out ethical leadership in an organization, including the leadership of a country, can lead to a more just and caring society. Because ethical leadership is about the ethics and moral principles of the leaders who use these ethics and moral principles to rightly balance the different interests of individual and group stakeholders. Very, very important. So let's not just look at ethical leadership as that big thing that's supposed to be done by the senior people, by the CEOs, by the board of directors. But let's look at it as that thing that has to be embraced by all of us in an organization, because ethical leadership starts with the personal, the person. It is you, it is me as Irene. Also, in terms of the good things, is that they also aim to gain returns that benefit their firm, its stakeholders, the CEO, at the same time obtaining everything with a preview of ethics and moral principles. When an organization has good ethical leadership, and like we said, all of us as an organization have a responsibility. So once it's well embraced, then the returns benefit the firm, and we are all in that firm. You can understand from the above situation that being ethical is not only important, but is also very crucial. Therefore, ethics should be integrated into the basic day-to-day working of each and every employee of an organization. I cannot reemphasize that it is for every employee in the organization. Let's not just assume that it's for the special few, it is for every organization. The other thing is that, however, this is a rider. We said it's for every organization. However, we do appreciate that as one goes up in the organization hierarchy, it becomes crucial that an organization should have ethical leaders. Because you can imagine if you have an ethical leader, what would happen? And I'm sure we may not have a case study here, but if you can just pause and ask yourselves about organizations whereby maybe have been led by unethical leaders, what has been the fate of those organizations? Because as leaders, you're supposed to follow and preach. ethical leadership. This is because these leaders who lead the employees and guide them. And as leaders, if you're not ethical, then how does the organization expect you to function? Because everything, like I said, every little thing that you do in leadership, there's an element of ethics in it. Yeah. Therefore, we can conclude and say that ethical leadership is important because it conveys how leaders are viewed by their followers, peers, and superiors based on their perception of the leader's character and behavior. How do you behave in the office? What is your behavior? That's what you talk about ethics. And that's what I'm saying. Ethical leadership is about every small thing that you do. Because everything small thing that you do as a person, as an employee, there's an element of behavior, there's an element of character. Therefore, very, 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 very important. So we go now to the gist. And I said, like, after we've discussed the importance and what is meant by ethical leadership, we're going to understand what is ethics. If someone was to ask you today, what is ethics? What would you tell them? So ethics has been defined as a part of the human society right from the time of Plato and Aristotle. And the word ethics has been derived from a Greek word called ethos. Ethos means character, conduct, or customs. Hence, we can say that ethics are those morals or values that are considered appropriate by members of the society and individuals themselves. And for us to deeper understand the ethics, I would want to pose a question and ask ourselves, when you think about yourself, when you're a small girl or a small young man, there are those things that you're told they're not good. Girls, you'll be told to go to the kitchen and cook. Young men will be told either to go to the farm. There are those things that you'd find the young men, maybe they'll be there constructing some vehicles. Yep. Things that the society perceives to be done by men and others by women. And some of those things, if you reflect on them, and allow me to maybe think about young ladies, maybe when you're a young girl and you get to class 7, class 6, as you're not getting to adulthood, there's something that maybe your parents will tell you or your guardians will tell you that girls avoid this. It's unfortunate, maybe at times you'll be told girls avoid boys or boys avoid, there'll be so many things. And maybe when we do those things, even today when you talk to our children, we say it because it's how we perceive. That's how they perceive. That's how the society perceives it. Maybe at that time, the society perceived that when you get into adolescence, you should avoid men. But were you told why you're avoiding those men? So if that is not well explained to you, what will happen? You may create a value in you, or you may think that men are to be feared or otherwise, because that is a perception of the society. So why I'm giving this example is for us to appreciate that some of these things, they start from when we are young, and that's why it's a personal thing. What did my mother tell me when I went to church? What did my pastor tell me? What did my imam tell me about my principles as a Christian, about my principles as a religious person? If I don't go to church, the supreme being that I believe in, what are these values that guide? So when we look at about some of these things, and we see that members of society, individuals themselves, is because they are considered to be appropriate. If I'm a Christian, it's considered to be appropriate to go to church on Sunday. But by going to church on Sunday, does that make me an ethical person? I can be going to church on Sunday, but what I'm doing is off what should be done. So ethics is these things that build our character. And the way my character has been built is different from the other person. And one of the things that at times when you're trying to change our character is that we don't look for the root cause. Where did it start? What brought this person to behave like this? And people are very rough. And you'll be like, gosh, so-and-so is very rough. Whatever you do, they're just rough. You try to talk to them, you try to mentor them, they're still very rough. But maybe whatever was brought to them up is like, as a man, you have to be tough. But nobody told them, be tough, but be tough in a way that you don't compromise maybe the peace of other people, you don't compromise your ethics. So ethics is a big word, and that's what we're saying. It started from long time ago, okay? And it's what defines what is right and what is wrong. Based on the characters that you have, based on what value you have as a person. And that's why I said ethical leadership starts with you as a person. What is right for me, unfortunately, may be wrong for another person. And if you ask that person, they can define, they can explain to you why they believe it is right or wrong or otherwise. Therefore, we can say ethical leadership is about how we view our leaders, especially at our workplace. What drives you as a leader? What is their perception about their leader's character, his or her action, and the behaviors? So in a nutshell, that is what we're asking ourselves in this training. If you are a leader, if today you to take a SWOT analysis about yourself as a leader, what will people, or what is their perception about you, about your character? Will define character further, about your actions. Yesterday, Irene came late, you discipline them. Tomorrow, Lucy comes late, it is okay. She comes to your office, you laugh, and it is fine. And interesting, people look at these actions and they see them. How are you? How do you manage people? Is things that are right for others and wrong for others? Or are we dealing with everybody as equals because we are driven by values and principles? Okay. Therefore, and most of the things as I talk, you find that they're on the slide. So when we repeat, it's because we really want to ensure that we embrace them and we internalize them. Therefore, based on my explanation, is that it's good for us to appreciate that ethics is one of the most crucial qualities that a leader should possess. Let me tell you one thing, you can have the greatest professional qualifications, 5 degrees, whatever certificates, but if your ethics are in question, and if people perceive you, and we've said ethics is more about character and behavior and the decision making. If people perceive you to be unethical, I can tell you, even if you're the greatest of them all, they will do things because you have to do it, but your perception over that person becomes very questionable. And why we need to ensure that it is good is because we lead, others follow. And you'll agree with me, and as I said, everybody is a leader. Even the person seated at the desk, or the personnel, or the security personnel, there are people who follow them. There's somebody who looks at them and is like, wow, I love the way the security personnel is behaving. You inspire other people. Yeah. Also, the nature of relationship between leaders and followers is such that leaders influence their followers. Especially if you're a leader, you're leading a team, and you have good ethics. You hear people saying, wow, I have a wonderful boss. And maybe you'll ask, why? Why do you think you have a good boss? Hey, my boss is very nice. You know, even if you have an issue, you call them, they'll understand. Another person will be like, my boss, my goodness. And you're like, why? He doesn't understand. She doesn't understand. Yesterday, my child was sick and they had to tell me this, and you know, because how are you influencing them? Are you influencing them positively or negatively? And as leaders, it is our role. It is our hope that we can be able to influence people positively. Because you're told as a leader, you're supposed to pass on the baton. So do you want to pass a positive baton or you want to pass a negative baton? So whether a leader will positively or negatively influence his followers greatly depends on the leader's character and behavior, and that is the nature and outcome of his behaviors. So it is purely on you. And like I said, character and behavior, it is a personal thing. Nobody will ask you, as Irene, what is your behavior? They will say. Yes, you can have your well articulated as you're on the job profile, you want a person who is good in this, in this, in this. However, that can only be evaluated by how you behave, your character. Yeah, so what is the outcome? And as we're going on with this training, I love challenging my participants. And like I always say, is that training we all learn. And for me, even as a facilitator, I learn as I train. And I want us to pause and ask ourselves, if today, people that report to us, or even our colleagues, if they're to be asked, does Irene bring positive vibes or negative vibes? Even for a team, of course, you have their personalities. There are people who are outgoing. But let's not confuse personality with character and behavior. We know people who are very quiet, but everybody likes them. We know people who are very loudy, but people don't like them. So just internalize and ask yourself, am I an ethical or unethical? And that is something that is a personal thing, like I said. It's a personal thing that only you can answer. And I believe you're here because we want to, at the end of the day, to be the best ethical leaders that we can be, and we're able to pass that on to our colleagues. And we as leaders, as we continue the importance of ethics of leadership, is that we need to understand its importance. Because as a leader, you have a lot of responsibility, not only to yourself, but to your followers. Because if all of them, if they follow you and they get into a ditch, you are responsible. And like you always hear people say, the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. But most leaders will tell you the higher you go, the hotter it becomes. Why? Because there are people who are following you. There's so much at stake. And one simple thing that you do has an impact on the organization. So you can imagine like the case study that we started about David. David was a wonderful, great employee, a wonderful senior person. But one simple temptation that got him to a fraud case had an impact on his followers. You can imagine the organization even having to close. So you can imagine the kind of impact you have on those followers, on their families, because they're family members, they have families, they have children. Yeah. We also reminded that we as leaders, we are highly influential because we have power. And power, not only the power that is personal, interpersonal, but in terms of the hierarchy. In case of issues that being escalated, you're the boss. People report to you. And like I said, everybody at their own level, there are people who come and seek your guidance. So that influence, how are you using it? Are you using it in a positive way or in a negative way? Do we respect our followers and treat them with dignity? Ethical leadership, when we embrace, will ensure that you treat people with respect. And when I talk about ethical leadership, one of the things that comes to my mind, in all due respect, is that we've seen in this country people who have lost very senior positions, very, very senior positions, just because they did not treat a follower with respect. And a follower can be somebody who reports to you, or even anybody who looks, especially at a country point of view. We have leaders. There may be a leader for a specific area, but in a country, they are our leaders. When you walk around, how do you treat people? Do you treat people with respect and dignity? A question that we need to ask ourselves. Because the moment you don't do it, its impact is great. It's great. And I believe all of us have seen it happen to leaders who have treated people with a lot of lack of dignity, and they lost very, very big and influential offices. Moreover, we are reminded that personal values of a leader will affect and decide the kind of ethical climate that will develop in your organization. Personal, we still go to the personal. It's a personal thing. What are your personal values? Yeah. So as a leader, we encourage that we should always be ethical while we're developing and establishing organization values. Like I said, ethical leadership, there's a hierarchy. You may be on top there. When you're developing your values, are your values copied? I've realized, and it's very unfortunate, that most organizations, when you're doing your strategic plan and you need to embrace your values, your vision, your principles, you find people just put values there for the sake of putting them. You feel like most organizations will have the value of integrity, which is good. But if you ask somebody, why do you think you guys thought you need to have the value of integrity? They can't explain it because it's a copying and pasting. So the challenge that we're getting today is that let's ensure as we develop these values, each organization has values, most organizations have. Let's believe in them and let's have a reason as to why we feel this value works for us. Let's not just copy and paste. And this is just a teaser. We are told that the greatest scandal in history have taken place due to lack of embracing ethics in leaders and the lack on the part of the managers and executives to not understand the importance of putting stakeholders first. We think about our own. We don't think about our followers. And our followers in this case, maybe the employees we're working with, maybe the stakeholders. And like I said, assume like not the company that we're talking about and David, the law firm. If it closes down, you can imagine how many stakeholders are involved. We have the financiers, we have the banks, we have the families, you can imagine most likely this organization was being involved in community services, responsibility, CSRs. So you can imagine the stakeholders that have been affected just because of lack of ethics. Therefore, it's very important for us to ensure that we embrace ethics because as little as it looks, its impact can be great. So having explained what ethics is, and I believe we are now very clear about the ethics, is that I'm going to take you through the various theories of ethics. And as an intro is that they're broadly classified into main categories. One is theories that relate to leaders' behavior and those related to leaders' character. Like I said, those two things are very key. A leader's behavior and a leader's character. And the theories that are related to character are described as virtue-based approaches. That is about character. Your character as a leader, your character as a person. Further, the theories that are related to behavior are classified in two types. Theories that relate to leaders' conduct and their consequences. What are the consequences of your conduct? I come today, I shout at as a security personnel. What are the consequences for that? Yep. The other classification is theories that relate to the rules of duty that decide the leader's conduct. Rules of duty. I, as a CEO, what is the expectations? How am I supposed to behave as I conduct my responsibility? I, as a human resource manager, as a head of human resource, what are the rules of duty? And I think one of the clear things about HR, we should not discriminate in any way. So what are those rules of duty? So behaviors, they're defined into the consequences and the rules of duty. The theories that are related to consequences are known as teleological theories. Yep. And for us to understand this, is that this word has been derived from the Greek word telos, which means purpose or end. Yes, please. Someone is talking? Okay. Maybe that is just maybe you can mute. Then in case you need to talk, you can maybe raise your hand and or you can just pop in and I'll be able to give you the opportunity. For those ones who joined us as we started, we'll say that as I go through the presentation, in case you have a question, you can always pause. In case you feel I'm very fast, you can always request that I pause, and I am going to be able to moderate accordingly. So don't feel like you want to have said something and can't say it. You can also post it on the chat and I'm going to pick it up. So as you continue, we're discussing the ethical theories and we're talking about the teleological ones. And the word telo means purpose or end. That's why we're talking about the consequences. Yeah. And it's more concerned about whether a leader's action, conduct, or behavior will have a positive outcome. So we are looking for the positive outcome in this, the consequence. What is the consequence of this behavior? Yep. And the key thing is to ask ourselves as a leader is that this person's behavior, will it be ethical or unethical? If it is a positive outcome, then we can say it's ethical. If it's a negative, then whatever behavior they did was unethical. Then we have theories that relate to duty or rules. Same came from a Greek word called deos, and deos means duty. And these theories are more concerned with the actions that lead to the consequences, actions. And we are asking ourselves, are these actions good or bad? Yeah. Now, in details, let's get to understand them. That was more of an intro. So virtue-based approaches, theories related to leaders' character. And what we'll be asking ourselves, and what we're asking the leaders is, what is your character? And in terms of these theories that are related to the leader's character, key to notice, like I said, we have the perception. We can learn them through experiences and practices. And maybe that's why you find in some positions, you hear people saying that we need somebody who has been qualified or who has worked in a multinational organization, in a diverse organization, diversity, where you have all kinds of people. Yeah, because somehow it builds your character, because there's some things you see for the first time. If you've never seen it before, and since your character, at times they say that you cannot be able to hide. People will be like, wow, is this person serious? So experience and practice makes perfect, because it helps you in your character. And that's the times you're told, undertake a SWOT analysis about yourself as a leader. And you ask yourselves, which are these areas I, as Irene, need to improve? And the main source of learning these virtues is provided by an individual's family and society with which an individual interacts throughout his lifetime. And like I earlier said, we have these perceptions. What did your pastor tell you? What did your mother tell you? What did your parents, your guardians, your cousins, your friends? What did they tell you? That forms a big chunk of the foundation of our character. But if you're told boys are not good or young men are not good because they fight girls, or young men are supposed to fight for you to get what you want, do you grow believing in that? It reaches a point and you ask yourself, is this right or not wrong? Or not? Because values is about, ethics is about right or wrong. So if all through you are the star of fighting, when we went to school, I remember like the last day of school, people would have something we used to call wanted. And we used to know that people were very good at fighting. So if I had an issue with you, I would look for the greatest fighter to be on my side. And people would have groups, and people would fight. At that time, we believed that was the best thing. But does that mean that now, today, if I'm a leader, I have to believe in that? That has to be my behavior, that when things don't work, if I'm working with a team and I realize one of my team members is behaving in a way that is not acceptable to me, then what I'm going to do is I divide and rule. I make sure I have 2 camps. We have to practice. Experience has shown us that if you want to have a good team, embrace everybody's personality, embrace everybody's weaknesses by improving them, embrace everybody's strength by taking advantage of them and giving them responsibilities that are within those strengths. That is what we're talking about. That what we've learned before, we can practice based on what is required. Yep. And according to this theory, it says that it pays a lot of attention in telling individuals what to be, as opposed to telling them what to do. What do I want you to be? I want you to be a good employee, to come to work on time. Then from there, it's up to you. Yep. It's about what I want you to. Telling individuals about what to be. You want to be a good leader? You have to have this. You have to have this. You have to have this. Yep. As opposed to telling them what they need to do. Because I can have the good behaviors of a leader, but how do I do it? I want to be a team player, but how do I do it? Okay. That's what we call it there. It's more about the leader's character, the virtue-based approach. Okay. Thanks, Ali, for the question regarding the slides. Thank you for the comment, positive comment. The slides are good. And yes, once we're done with the training, everything is always posted on our YouTube page, and you can be able to pick up the slides from there. Secondly, you can be able, for those who came in late, it is being recorded, so you can be able to get everything that you need from our ACHRP website. So just log in, you have your credentials, and you'll be able to get access to all these training materials, and especially when you need to make reference. So thank you for that question. And I believe even for the others who may be asking, then that is what we do after every training. We record it, and the materials are always accessible through our YouTube. Follow us on YouTube, go through them, listen, like, comment, and so at least in the spirit of continuous improvement. So as I continue, is that what are these characters that, according to Astra, we suggest are examples of an ethical person? 1, generosity, honesty, courage, self-control, fairness. You need to be social, you need to be modest, you need to be justice. So these are things that build our character. However, you realize all of us can be good in one and not good in the other. And that's what we're told, we practice and we learn. I may not be a generous person, but I want to be generous. So I start and I say 1 day at a time. So whatever you don't have, 1 day at a time. So we go to the next one. So we also have another theory by a guy called Valescu, that is very current, 1992, whereby they suggested that organizational managers should have, learn, and retain the following virtues: perseverance, benevolence, truthfulness, public spiritedness, humility, fidelity, integrity. And when we look at ourselves and the leaders that we would want to be, and this is why I tell people at times, pause and let's ask ourselves, where do I fit in all this? If somebody was to look at me as an ethical leader, Do I have these characters? Or if I don't have, what can I do to ensure that I have them? And allow me to talk about humility. What is humility? And what I tell people is, at times as leaders, when you become, the higher you go, I don't know, maybe if anybody has an answer to this, I'd really be happy. Why is it the higher we go, our humility percentage tends to be diluted? And you find somebody was very nice, very humble, had all this, was very perseverance, was very caring about other people, was very truthful in terms of public, the spirit was good, integrity. But the moment they get these higher offices, the humility is compromised. What happens? Anybody from the participants who'd want to give me the answer? Because that is something I've been asking myself. What happens? It's open. Anyone can tell us. Anyone who'd want to share? Anyone, please? We said we are all learning. Even that we learn, we train and learn. Or do I mention names? Who can tell me what happens as people go higher? The humility tends to be compromised. Daniel?
Yes, good morning. My name is Daniel now. I've just joined in. I think I'm late, but I don't know whether I'll be on the track to say that, yes, the humility of the managers. Managers should have humility as one of the virtues by at least not trying to show their muscle as being seniors or making unilateral decisions on their own without involving the others. They should always, involve other staff when they are when they have anything to that affects them to be implemented. Yeah. I don't know whether I'm on track. You may correct me.
No, Daniel, thank you very much. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. You're very much on track and appreciate it. And don't worry, even if you're late, we are recording. So once you're done, you can be able to check out and so at least you can be able to follow on what may have been missed. Yes, Mary?
You're not audible?
Oh, sorry, I had muted myself. I was muted. No, you can hear me now?
Yes, you can be heard.
And you can see me? Someone has said
yes, I can.
Sorry, my video was off. So my video is on now. Margaret says that they tend to forget where they came from and they're carried away by power. Very true, that power at times gets into their minds and they forget where they came from. And I think there's one thing we've always had with the politicians, when they're looking for the votes, they'll pick our calls. But the moment they get in, trust me, it becomes another issue. So like we were saying, and like Daniel has rightly said, humility is something that we need to embrace. And let's always remember where we've come from. Because like I tell people, we are who we are because of other people. You cannot be a leader if people did not make you a leader, or they're not people to supervise. So let's always try as much as possible to embrace the humility. We continue with our presentation. And now we talk about the theories that are related to the consequences. And these theories are more concerned about whether a leader's action and behavior or conduct have positive outcomes. So what is the outcome of our behavior? What is the outcome of the behavior you have undertaken as a leader? And when we look at that, we go further and ask ourselves, these theories, and as per the, sorry for that. Okay. So what we're saying, as per these theories, the outcome related to a person's behavior establish whether the behavior was ethical or unethical. Moreover, the following three approaches are used to measuring the outcomes of whether they're viewed as ethical. So we look at these three approaches and ask ourselves, whatever I've done, is it ethical? It's like the measure, is it ethical or unethical? So we start with the first one, and it's more about the ego, ethical egoism. And stand for those actions of leaders that are meant to obtain the greatest good of the leader. What is the utmost good, greatest good of that leader? I am the CEO. So based on me being the CEO, how does that affect me? Do I now change from being Irene to that egoistic CEO? The other is one that utilitarianism. And these are actions of leaders that are meant to obtain the greatest good of the largest number of, for the largest number of people. So there's the greatest good for the leader, the greatest number of the people, and the last one is whereby the actions of the leaders are meant to show concern for others' interests, even if these interests are contrary to the leader's self-interest. And this is whereby we are told, you as a leader, your followers are more important. What do you? You're leading a team. And there's times you're told as a leader, even when you get to a meeting, don't be the person you pray. You know, have you seen those leaders? You go to a meeting. So we're having a meeting today, and let's start our meeting. Who's going to lead us with prayers? You're the one who prays. Who has the agenda? You have all the agendas. You discuss all the agendas. You make the resolutions. After that, you're like, let's pray, let's break off. You know, be a leader who allows your interest to come secondary. Even if you have an interest, let it come in such a way that the other people also believe that you did not push your agenda, okay? The other theories are those that you're talking about the duty of the rules, and they're more concerned with the actions that lead to the consequences and whether the actions are good or right, or good or bad. So these are rules or theories that are related to the duty, what you do. You as a human resource director, what are these rules? Like now, I would say one of the things that we're guided as human resource professionals are guided maybe by the Employment Act. There are rules that are there. So what do you do to ensure that you embrace those rules, but still not compromise your ethics and still look like that ethical leader who has a behavior and a character that is acceptable? And one of the things that I challenge the human resource people is, especially when you look at the duty and rules, when somebody has to be separated, maybe they got into a misconduct, and you've seen some people being handled so unhuman. You find that you come in the morning, your offices are locked, you don't even access to the office, you come at the gate, the security people don't allow you in, and they're embarrassing you. Maybe in the office, all of a sudden there are like 5 security people standing around your office, and that, yeah, yes, I've done something wrong, but can to at least handle me with some dignity, you know? So the duty and the rules, how do we behave when the duty calls, when the rule calls and we have to make a decision? And this decision may be a negative decision, but how do we ensure that we still implement a negative decision, a bad decision, in a way that we don't compromise people's dignity? So this approach, of course, depends upon the fact that whether or not an action is ethical depends not only on its outcome, but also on whether the action, behavior, conduct itself is inherently good. Hence, this theory lays stress on the actions of leaders. The actions of leaders. How do you act when things happen? And their ethical responsibility to do what is right. Something comes to your desk, and for real, you know, it says this should not be done. But for you as a leader, how do you embrace it? Because at the end of the day, you have a responsibility, not only to the followers, you also have a responsibility to your employer. So how do you enforce the rules, but in a dignified way? I agree. As Jane Mwangi is adding that lack of self-awareness and accountability. Because if you don't understand yourself, then what happens? You'll be there shouting, thinking it's the best thing. However, and you find some people, you tell them, why are you shouting at us like that? Like, was I shouting? I thought I was just talking, you know? So it's very good for you to have a self-awareness. And like I started, for those who came in a little bit late, I said, in ethical leadership, key to understand is your strengths and your weaknesses. And we are told your weaknesses are your areas of improvement. If you don't understand yourself, at what point do I feel like if this person continues talking, I'm going to slap them? You've heard people say that. And that you can only say when you understand yourself, because you know at what point all of us, we are told we have two sides. So at what point, what excites me, what irritates me? You understand yourself. And are you accountable for your actions? Because there's nothing as sarcastical as a leader who does something like, you know, at that moment, I was really annoyed. My friend, you have to be accountable of your actions. That is key in terms of ethical leadership, accountability. So thank you so much, Jane, for real. Accountability and self-awareness is very important as a good ethical leader. So the things about or the actions that we as leaders are expected to embrace in reference to this theory is one, being fair, telling the truth. Like I said, some of the rules will be there, but when you're coming to implementing them, are we seeing the truth? You've seen some people being set up. Just because this rule says if Irene does this, they are going to be terminated. You can just build a case. And clearly you know that it is not right. Are you being ethical? Yeah, respecting others. Like I said earlier, I've done something wrong, but how do you treat me? How do you get me out of the organization? Do you come and you're frog matching me, you know? And that time I'm the whole CEO. We've seen CEOs crying on media, on our national TVs, because someone just came and they did some crazy things to them. Do we keep our promises? We said you're going to treat everybody equally. Are we doing that? Are we being honest? Are we sticking to commitments? And I always tell leaders, don't commit what you know you cannot provide. Commit what you know is possible. Being modest. As far as the duty rules are there, are you modest or you're not getting off cuff? If Irene does it, they have to be taken off. So you don't care. You call the whole media to embarrass me. Let's be modest about what we're doing, okay? And that is the element of, because as much as we have this theory, the ethical leadership is key about how do we behave? What is our character? Are we there clapping and celebrating when others are failing? Or are we there to give them hope, regardless of what has happened? And I always tell people, and I challenge most of the human resource professionals, when you separate people, can that person, in case tomorrow you meet with them in church or wherever, will they talk to you? Or they will look at you as that enemy who made them lose their jobs? Were you fair in the process? Did they understand? And I tell people, and I say this with no fear of contradiction, that most of the colleagues that I've worked with and most of the colleagues that you find I'm very close to are those people that maybe have taken through a disciplinary hearing. Because after that, you treat them as human beings. You separate them as human beings. And they feel for real, even if I was in Irene's shoes, I would have done the same. You tell them the truth and you give them their due respect, you know. But some of us feel, or the perception that everybody has out there, especially for the human resource professional, is that we are there to hire and fire. But even when you fire, let that behavior person, your behaviors, your character, your ethical leadership rating, let it not be degraded. Embrace it in the best way possible. So this is just a question, so allow me to pass that. And having gone through the various ethical theories, we now go to explaining the ethical leadership perspectives of leadership scholars, and scholars will be people who have really taken their time to understand leadership. So we'll go through that, and like you realize is that most of this will be they're interrelated with what we've been going through. So when you talk about the ethical perspectives, we're going to have two. We're going to look at two people. So we have the first one, that is by Hevstys, that is 1994, also very current, and Barnes, 1978, that is the Barnes and ethical leadership perspective. So to start with, is whereby the first perspective, it leads or it puts more emphasis or stresses on the leader's skills to deal with conflict management. He stressed upon the responsibility of a leader to help his followers in dealing with conflict and effecting changes that come from conflict. As you all know, one of the skills that we're all supposed to have as leaders is conflict management, because conflict will always be there. Conflict can even be task conflict, can be personal conflict, can be any kind of conflict. And you find at times, especially when we're dealing with task conflicts, these are conflicts that come as you're performing your responsibility, you're performing your duty, whereby you have objectives that have been set for you. However, maybe you feel they have some challenges. And some of the challenges is just about the tool of trade that we have. So how do we deal with those conflicts? And that's his main focus was on the values of followers, the organizations in which they work, and the communities in which they live. So what are the values? As an organizations, we know that we have values, and you go to any organization, most organizations, let me say so, the first thing that you find at the entrance is very well displayed values. And the assumption is that the followers or the employees understand all the values. Yeah. And the ideal of values is that all of us as an organization, like I said, an organization is like a human being, is that you're supposed to be driven by those values. If it's integrity, all of us with no exceptions are supposed to have that value of integrity. The communities in which we live in, how is our community? And the community will be more of the, what is the culture? Where are we? You know, because some communities, there's some values you embrace and they're like, no, that is not our value. So the community that we live in also has an impact on the kind of leadership that we embrace. And that's why you find, I don't want to mention anybody, but you hear people saying, wow, people will be in a meeting like, gosh, you guys are sounding like you're from a certain community, because that is a community. That is how it is, because that is a value system of the community, and you cannot get it out from them. What you can do is only that they know that this is a challenge, or this is not fitting well with our values. So I practice, and out of experience, I become part of whatever is acceptable. So as per this perspective, he says that it is the predominant responsibility of a leader to create a work atmosphere for his followers, which nurtures and encourages an environment of one, empathy. And I tell leaders, we have to differentiate between empathy and being sympathetic. Empathy is whereby you try and put yourself in that person's shoes. I've had leaders or people come to me, and especially the followers, and they'll be like, I can't believe what my boss has told me. I call to say that my child is sick, and they ask me, are you the only person who has a child in this organization? Is that being empathetic? Yeah. Do you trust people or everything? Of course, you're told you have to trust with those. So don't just trust for the sake of trusting. Trust because that person deserves to be trusted. Because again, if you trust the wrong people, then trust me, and things go wrong, then you can imagine what can happen. Yeah. Do we nurture people? Evolution. Do we embrace innovation? Or we just wherever we were last year is where we are today? Growth. Do we grow? Do we grow people? And I tell people growth is not just about growing in height or growing in weight or growing a career in terms of the hierarchy. You want to come from this level to be a supervisor, to be a manager. You can also grow based on the responsibilities by widening the job scope. And how do we survive in the face of adversities? When things don't work, do we all crumble down? Or have you created an environment as a leader to ensure that even when things are not doing well, when things are crazy, my team is still holding up? And how you can be able to do that, one of the things is about accountability. At times you'll go to those meetings and everybody is like, your department, you guys are doing nothing, and they want to, crazy things. But you as a leader, how do you hold on your team? How do you continue giving them hope? How do you continue inspiring them, regardless of the challenges or regardless of the stones that have been thrown? Yeah, so that is one of a key responsibility for you as a leader, in case you want to embrace this perspective of leadership. Then we go to the next one about Barnes. This is by a guy called Barnes. And this is 1978, whereby he emphasized or stressed about transformational and ethical leadership. Currently, everybody is talking about transformational leadership, but do we understand what it is about? This is whereby we're told as leaders, we should help our followers in achieving higher ethical and moral standards, especially when differing values conflict. We all agree we come from different perspectives, we come from different communities, we come from different families. And every day when I leave my house, I come from a different house. You all don't come from the different houses. So when you meet at the workplace, and like we have seen earlier, that all this, the community defines our character to some extent. So you as a leader, what are you doing to ensure that we as a team, regardless of where I come from, regardless of what my community believes in, there's some communities that will not believe that a lady could be a leader. And you're there, you're the lady and you're the leader. So what do you do? And you have this man who believes that no lady can be a leader in their community, because in their community, women are there to listen. Women are there to look out for the children. So what do you do as a leader? Yeah, so it is your calling to ensure that all these conflicts that can bring some conflict within our organizations, we embrace them and we ensure that everybody is feeling that no one is being discriminated because of their community, nobody is being discriminated because of their gender, or whoever would want to call it, okay? Then Barnes secondly says that it becomes even more challenging in cases where conflict is confronted during difficult situations. And you see, they say when people are annoyed, and I tell people when someone is annoyed with you and they're shouting, be very keen about what they say. Because some people are able to talk about things that they're not able to talk about when they're not annoyed. So there's something that comes, it triggers. So don't be so annoyed when people are annoyed at you. They tell you things that maybe others would not have told you. But you as a leader, as an ethical leader, how do you manage that situation? Do you say that I know Irene is right because I like Irene? Or do you sit Irene and Lucy and you look for a way that works for both of them? Yeah. Maybe it is a situation that is calls for some tough decisions to be made. And you really have to explain that to your team. How do you do it? Yeah. So that is what Barnes is encouraging us, that we as leaders, we need to be transformational, whereby we are transforming people to be better people, that regardless of what is happening, regardless of those difficult situations, we are a team. We have an objective to achieve. We have a vision for a certain organization, That is our role. And we're supposed to embrace good ethics, good characters, good behaviors to ensure that we achieve that. Because Ban, we're told, was of the view that interactions between a leader and his followers should help to nurture and elevate the ethical behavior and character of both. You transform people, you build people. And how do you do it? Do you do it in a dignified way, or you go in a meeting and you're telling somebody, you know, Irene, I don't like the way you do it. Trust me, even if you want to help that person, it will not work. Do it in a more professional way, because as a leader, you should place stress upon and help your follower to develop values. Because if you feel they don't have those values, it is your responsibility. Research and ask yourself, the self-awareness, what can I do? Which of my strengths can I use to ensure that I'm able to develop these values on my followers? Because that is the only way you're going to have a team. That is the only way you're going to have a working environment that embraces the values that are acceptable to you and for the organization. Justice. Be the first person. And like I always say, lead by example. Because you can try to lead people, you can try to develop values on people. However, you don't have those values. So what will happen? In case I'm not a justice person, and I'm there trying to tell people that we need to be good, you know, that we need to ensure that we embrace this, then they just look at me and just laugh. And after that, they go behind your back and they're saying, no, this one, alikuwa anatuambia nini? Siangejiambia wewe mwenyewe. You know that these people talk behind our backs as leaders. Okay. So we need to be very, very clear that we first embrace ourselves. And before you stand in front of people or in a meeting, trying to tell them how just you need to be, trying to tell them how you need to be equal, how you need to embrace the principle of equity and equality, and how liberal you're supposed to be, you must be the first person to ensure that you have embraced those values. Otherwise, you'll just be talking to, it's like talking to a stone. Because they'll be like, hata ongea for the sake of talking, because they have to achieve something. So having seen both, we can see very clearly that there's a relationship between a leader and his followers, and it lies at the core of ethical leadership. So you as a leader, whichever perspective you want to embrace, core is about ethical. How ethical are you? Such similar ideas were also put forward by other scholars. There's a scholar called Gillian, 1982, and this was through his idea of ethic of caring. And the ethic of caring, someone is talking? Kindly let's mute, unless you want to contribute to this, so at least we don't interfere with the presentation. So as per Gillian, he says, the ethic of caring is of prime importance and has become a central principle in ethical leadership. This is out of some research that was done. And it is considered critical or crucial to organization as it helps in developing collaboration and trust among leaders and followers. When you bring in the element of care, somebody kindly turn off your mic. Let me see who this is. So at least we don't interfere with the floor. Yeah, thank you. So like I was saying, the ethic of caring is that everyone wants to be cared for. Even you as a leader, you feel nice when people care for you. Take for an example when you're not feeling well. And maybe you're at home, you've been admitted, people bring you flowers, they bring you cards, and when you're back to the office, like I always tell my colleagues, the place I worked, and I was kindly, let's mute. Someone is talking. Let's mute our mics. Thank you. So I was given an example about the ethic of caring. There's a time I wasn't feeling well and had to go to through an operation. I was in hospital, and my colleagues came to see me. They brought me flowers, and you feel really nice. But what really touched my heart is When I was supposed to resume back to work, the day I was resuming back to work, when I got into the office, I'm telling you, my office was decorated, like welcome back, there were flowers, there were chocolates. Trust me, you really feel cared for, So this principle, it's ethic, the ethic of caring. And out of that, if tomorrow your colleague has an issue, since you know how it feels to be cared for, you're going to care for that person. So let's try and embrace this, because the moment you embrace the ethic of caring, people start caring for each other. And when you care for somebody else, you're not going to harm them. You're going to ensure that everything is working for the good of everyone. So this is just a question as a teaser. And we have been asked who put forward the idea of ethic of caring. And I want to pose that question. And you have allowed me, who is going to respond to that question? It's open. So I can see if you're together, or maybe I'm just talking to myself.
If I may try, Gilligan.
Ah, lovely. Thanks, Daniel. Let's appreciate Daniel. Thank you so much. Yes, Agnes also had gotten it right. Thank you. True. Yeah, you got it right. He's a guy who came up with the ethic of caring, a very important value. Let's care for each other. So we go to the next principle or the next objective of this training. And this is a principle of the principles of ethical leadership. So which are these principles that we as ethical leaders, we as people who are developing ethical leaders, which are these principles that we need to embrace, that we need to ensure that we have, that we need to talk to them about? Because, we may have the principle, the people you're developing, do they understand what is the base of this? And to start with, I'll put on my camera once more. And we're told there are 5 principles, 5 main principles that drive the development of ethical leadership. And these 5 driving principles of ethical leadership are, they're as listed there. So we have respect for others, service to others, justice for others, honesty to others, building community with others. And you're going to look at each one of it in detail. And as you're looking through this, I know someone talked about the one they were writing and I said we're going to share the notes. However, because I believe most of us, all of us have a notebook, because we're always the first. For anything to work well, be the first person to ask yourself, do I do this? Because that is the only way you get to understand yourself, the self-awareness that Jen has spoken about. So as we're talking about these principles, just be asking and just be noting on your notebook. If I was to rate myself at 100%, where do I fall? Respect for others, am I at 20%, 30%, 90%, 50%? Because that is the only way we become better leaders. That is the only way we are going to be able to become good ethical leaders and be able to pass that to the people we are trying to transform, the people we are trying to develop. So that in case you find on your respect for others, you're rating 20% out of 100, then the question you ask yourself, what do I need to do for me to get to 40? Then you get to 40, get to 60. Because again, you cannot get from 20 to 100. That will be very ambitious and you may get frustrated as you're trying to get there. So it's one day at a time. So kindly let's ask ourselves, because that is the essence of these trainings, of this development, because you also want to develop yourselves. And as you guys are doing it, I'm also doing it from my side, whereby I'm also asking myself, in terms of my respect for others, at home, at work, in the community, people you meet, people you don't know, how do you behave? So we go to the first one, and that is respect for others. And what does this principle talk about? It says, as a leader, we can be ethical when we treat others with dignity and respect. Do you treat people with dignity? Do you respect people? And what is treating people with dignity? You find somebody regardless, like no, most of us, when you get into our workplaces, you'll always find a security personnel. Do you look at that person as your colleague, or you look at that person as just a security personnel? You don't even say hello to them, because I mean, I'm up there, we're not on the same level. I know there's some people, if you're working, you work somewhere and you find somebody, you're like, what are you doing here? Especially like nowadays, most organizations have cafeterias, and you feel, I cannot sit on the same table with a security personnel or with our messenger or our rider, because I mean, really, I'm at another level. Are you holding that person with dignity? Do you respect whatever they're doing? Because whatever they're doing is very important. Even like for us in our homes, we have our house managers. How do you treat them? Do you treat them with dignity? Because I say charity begins at home. Because if you don't do it in your house, there's no you're going to do it in the office. At a point, it's going to betray you, because you'll be pretending. Your real self will come out. Yeah. Therefore, we are told we should not treat people as a means to our own ends. I'm treating you well. Today, if I see a soldier and I know maybe I'm expecting a visitor and they'll come through the reception, I'll be very nice to them. I'm like, oh, Leo, hata kuna mzigo yangu inakuja hapa kuletwa. Yeah, the other days I never talk to them. Excuse me. The other days I don't talk to them. Yeah. Ethical leaders believe that followers have goals and ambitions. As an ethical leader who has respect for others, you believe and embrace that everybody has a goal and has an ambition. Even if they're seated at the gate, they have a goal. This is where they want to be. So respect them and treat them with the dignity that it calls for. They also believe that followers are human beings who have worth and value to the organization. Excuse me. Respect for others means that you believe everyone, even the least of them all, has a value. And I tell people, name anybody in the organization who doesn't have value in that organization, even the lowest of them all. Everybody has their worth and has their value. Hence, whenever there are conflicting viewpoints between a leader and his followers, he tends to use these traits of empathy, active listening, tolerance to resolve the conflicts. And this conflict, but it can be a personal conflict, whereby maybe I treated a rider badly. So what do? I'll sit down and ask myself, was I empathetic to that rider? Did I really listen, or just put them off just because they're a rider? They don't even know what they're saying. They're used to saying that children is sick. They're used to saying this. I mean, did I listen to them? Was I tolerant to resolve the conflict? The same. And the moment you build that skill, then you're able to now develop your other people by telling them, in case you have this conflict, this is how you're able to work around it. Okay. So that is respect for others. Rate yourself. We said we are rating ourselves. I've actually rated myself. Am I empathetic? Do I listen to others? Yeah. Or I'm like, in case I'm in a meeting, the list of the lowest in terms of the rank, I'm like, what are you saying? I mean, I have been the boss for the last 5 years. So what can you tell me about this? Okay. Service to others. That is the second principle. This principle, as a leader who is ethical, is whereby we are called upon to serve others. And for you to serve others is one, you show unselfish concern for the welfare of others and behave in the same way. I've seen, especially when you have welfare issues, if it's somebody who is senior, people will really contribute. But if somebody who is junior, it will be, why? You should put yourself before others. Even if it's a junior person, you are a leader. Equity, all of them are equal. Why treat Irene better because she's senior? Yet, Lucia is junior and you're like, you know. Yeah. Because the prime reason of being a leader for such individuals is leading, support, and nurturing your subordinates. This basically comes when you have, how do you behave when you're your subordinates? When you go for a meeting, you see people bring for you tea, they bring for you food, they pick the cups for you. Okay, it's a good thing. Then it also depends with the rules of an organization. The organizations whereby maybe we have people who are serving, but how about if it's an open whereby you serve yourself tea? Can you get yourself, or can you be humble enough to serve a rider tea? Would you be humble enough to allow everybody else to serve in case that there's no tea, then you'll be the last person who will miss? Or will you be everybody's coming to serve you because they can see it's getting finished and you're there and you're like, okay, fine, I don't know what will happen, yet it's on your budget. How do you serve? Are you service to others? In case they ask for your assistance, do you give it to them? Yeah. So these are things that we're asking ourselves. In case they require your mentoring, someone will come and tell you, oh, Irene, I like the way you handled that case. I wish I had that skill of being a good moderator or, resolving conflicts. Will you mentor that person? Or you'll be like, don't worry, it comes with age, Have you heard those people who say that? It comes with age, you don't worry. Kijana, wacha haraka. It will come with age. No. A good servant or service to people or to your followers is by they come to you, you mentor them. Or are you the person who believes I'm the one who knows it all? If it is a report, you know everything. You have all the passwords, you have all the admin rights, you have nobody else. If you're sick, everything comes to a standstill because you can't mentor anyone to do what you're doing. And mentoring is not just about the people you're working with, even in the community. As you're seated in this training, do you have anybody you're mentoring to become a better person, to become a leader? And we're told mentoring is in different, you can be even a family mentoring. Maybe you're very good in terms of family. Yeah. Building teams. Are you a leader who builds teams, or are you a leader who breaks teams? Are you a leader who believes in, like we talked about one of the theories? Yep. Divide and rule. So you have camp A and camp B based on how they serve you. You're supposed to serve them. So based on how they serve you, then you're like, oh, these are my favorites. Do you empower people in your team? Or you don't believe in anyone apart from yourself? And that's when now the personality issue comes in. Self-awareness, very important. Because there's some personalities whereby you don't believe other people can do it. And that is how that's your DNA. And if you don't understand that your DNA is affecting your ethical perspective or your efforts towards being an ethical leader, then rework on it. And that's your told, understand yourself. As a blue, maybe I believe I'm the only one who can do it. Yep. But if I understand that I can empower other people, and empowering actually is a win to me, because it makes me more accountable, it makes me empower people, it helps me develop people, then I'm going to embrace it. Do you delegate? Or you do everything, like I said, you go in a meeting, you're the one who prays, you're the one who takes minutes, you're the one who's chairing, you're the one who closes the meeting, you're the one who's driving all the agendas, you're the one who has, do you delegate? And you find some leaders, you'll always be up and down, and they're saying, I'm so busy, I don't even have time. Yet, the other team members are not very idle, but they're not busy because you don't delegate. And you hear somebody say, no, me, the things I don't delegate, I like doing them myself. Then it means you fail in terms of empowering. You don't empower your people. So as much as you're saying that, just know you're trying to portray your weaknesses. Let's delegate, and of course, delegate effectively. Because again, you can delegate and you delegate ineffectively and you get the wrong things. Because if you delegate, they say garbage in, garbage out. If you don't delegate well, this person will bring you trash. So let's ensure that we objectively delegate. Being empathetic, like I said earlier, let's be empathetic. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the followers that we have. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of our colleagues. If somebody comes and they have an issue, let's try and put ourselves and ask ourselves, if I was in their shoes, what would I do? Let's not be the people who put off people and they come there and you're like, huyo, tushazoea. Put yourself in their shoes. What if the same was said to you? And this is why I say, being a service Service to others is whereby you ask yourself and you say, you know what we say, do to others.
Did we lose you?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we have lost Irene.
You can hear me?
Yes, now you are audible.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
now we
lost
can hear you.
somewhere. We lost you somewhere.
Yes, sorry for that. So let me get back to where we were. We were on service, right?
Yes.
That's where we were.
Yes.
That's where we were, right?
Correct.
Okay. Sorry for that. So we go to the next principle, and that is a principle of justice for others. And as per this principle, we are encouraged as ethical leaders to have justice, and we are supposed to make sure that all our decisions are based on the sense of justice and fairness. And that's why I said, when something happens, if Irene does the same thing with what Lucy did yesterday, will the decisions made be the same? Or will we say, Irene is my favorite, so therefore this time, let me just assume it didn't happen? And we are encouraged as leaders who want to be ethical to treat all of our followers equally and as per with each other and also themselves. However, we also need to be very clear on the kind of the treatment, because at times, as much as we want to be just, there are issues that come in and you feel maybe this can work best for this person and not this other person. So we have to be really objective about it, whereby in case somebody comes and questions why this happened to Irene and it didn't happen to Lucy, then we can easily say, I did this to Irene because of 1, 2, 3. So let's be very, very specific. So what are these things that will make us to be justice as we treat others? One, we need to ensure, like I said, we are transparent about the treatment. If this was not done to Irene and was done to Lucy, are we transparent in case somebody is going to question us? We need to communicate the reason for such treatment clearly to the rest of the subordinates, where we are saying this had to be done like this because of 1, 2, and 3. Let everybody, let all the followers get to understand, and make sure that whatever treatment is morally right and reasonably logical. Because when somebody challenges you and it's not right, then it becomes very difficult for you to be able to explain. So ensure that it's right and sounds and reasonable in everything that you do. So based on that, like I said earlier, let's rate ourselves. We've not done the service to others, no justice for others. How just are we? And especially when we have to have 2 people and the treatment is not the same, how do we handle it? Then we go to the next principle, honesty with others. Are we honest? Because you're told whereby we're not honest toward others, this can destroy the trust of our subordinates. if people believe in you and you're not honest in them, and you've had people say, mimi nilikuwa nimemtrust, lakini nilifanya tu kitu tu, hiyo trust ikaisha. And they discuss it, you know, our followers discuss it. Therefore, it is very crucial. It's a fully crucial component in any leader. In case you want to have a good relationship with your team members, with your followers, ensure that you don't compromise their trust. Let them never lose trust in you. We're told them there's this issue, you've told them I'm going to discuss with the higher level, maybe with the CEO or with the management, and you know very well you're not going to do it. Somehow they get to know. And the moment they lose that trust, trust me, you become a leader whom they can't trust you, and you're not able to raise the trust level within your team, which is very, very important for any leader who wants to be successful. Hence, as an ethical leader, we should strive to be honest by portraying our honesty, by being open with others. When things don't work, I tell leaders, it's not a weakness to tell people that things didn't work. I presented it, but it was shut down. Be honest, let them understand. Yeah, let them express their thoughts openly and portray themselves as true and their real nature and character as they can. A true leader is a leader who can even has emotion, can show emotions. At times they say showing emotions in public is a weakness. But for me, I believe at times when you show emotions, people believe in you. Because they see you're a real person. They see they can relate with you. It's like, wow, you can also get annoyed. Okay, of course, I'm not saying you get annoyed and you throw those things out there. We have the emotional intelligence, how you manage yourself. But tell them, you know, I'm not happy about what happened, you know. At times, you've seen even some leaders cry in public. And people will be there saying, why did such and such a person cry in public? Trust me, for me, that is a very emotionally intelligent person, because I'm a human being. Who said being a leader stops you from being a human being? Being a leader does not make you a lesser human being. Yeah. However, you should keep in mind, regardless, that you should have the right balance between being honest and disclosing only what is appropriate in a given situation. So even if you're being emotional, again, don't become not that another emotional baby every day and they're like, even hizi machozi zake zimetuchokesha. I'm sure you've heard people say that. Yeah. All just have get a right balance, and especially when you have to be honest about other people, or you have to be honest about situations, because I'm sure there are times you're faced with situations that it's not easy to tell people as it is. But as a leader, just be honest with them, tell them, get the strength, talk to them nicely, let them get them to understand, and show your emotions. Okay, let them see you're empathetic with them. But don't go, you're there giving some bad news and you're laughing, you know? That's what I'm talking about, showing emotions. Something has happened. And you're there just telling them, you know what? I'm just from tomorrow, this department is being disbanded, and you're there laughing. Really? Yeah. So that's what it means. Be honest with them, but in a way that you're able to balance everything as it's supposed to be. And the researchers of scholars, I said scholars are that you're trying to look at their perspective, is because they come up with these things after having some research. And what they've come up with, based on the researches that have been done, is that one, a honest leader should not promise what he cannot deliver. I will make sure you guys get 10% increment in the next financial year. Is it within your control? If it is not, just tell them, I'm trying to see if you can get an increment, and it can come or not. So let's have an open mind. Ikikuja ni sawa, isipokuja, we continue. Okay? He should not misrepresent information or data. Don't tell people things for them to be happy, yet is a misrepresentation. He should not misrepresent himself. Don't tell people the way I know, okay, of course, at times you find that some leaders who really want to blow the trumpet from themselves. And I tell people, let people praise you, don't praise yourself. He should not hide vital information by evading communication with his subordinates. Be honest. If things are not working, tell them things are not working. Trust me, if you go to that management meeting and you're bashed, tell them you're bashed. And tell them, you know what, I took the bashment for you guys because there's something that you're not doing right. Take it. And I take responsibility as your leader. Maybe there's a place we need to tweak. Let them be clear. But don't just get the bashing of them, they're just seeing you happy. No, let them know things how things are. But you can only achieve that by communicating with them and not hiding information. Because if you show them things are doing well, yet at the upper level, things are not working, they're going to relax. And when things hit here and you're like, since last year, since we've been this has been happening, and don't hide vital information. Because the moment you do, and they get to find out about it, you are a team leader. You're supposed to lead a team in honesty. Kindly ensure that you fulfill that obligation, because you are accountable. The organization has entitled or has entrusted you in leading that specific team. Ensure that you're leading them in the best way possible. And when you have challenges, always consult. There's always be somebody whom you can consult. Be it your supervisor, be it your peers, be it your colleagues. Always ensure that you do that. You should try to avoid being responsible. He should not try to avoid being responsible. Some leaders, when things go wrong, like, no, it is not me, it is the accountant, it's the financer, it's the procurement. Take responsibility when things don't work. Yeah. He should not believe in the survivor, in the fittest, but instead should try to nurture and mentor the weaker subordinates to bring them at par with the rest of the team. I think I discussed about that. And kindly, just as a disclaimer, as much as we're talking about he, we all know that whenever we have he and she, they also, even for the ladies, it doesn't mean that this is basically for the men. So let's pick it as it is. We should always treat our subordinates with dignity and humility. I've really talked about that. We should be consistent about what we believe, think, say, and do. Let's be consistent. Today you say this who you are. Tomorrow you say, like, me, I believe in this. Then tomorrow, whatever you're saying you believe in, you're doing the opposite. So let us be consistent with our behavior and character. And always have the notion that we always have room for improvement. We should have an honest relationship with our subordinates and peers. We should strive to build strong trust among followers as their leader. It is your responsibility as a leader to build that trust among your followers. Nobody will come out from another department and do it for you. It is your responsibility. The next principle is building community with others. So this principle says that to be ethical, you have to be in communion with the others. And it's all about influencing others to achieve a common goal. We as a community, we as a team, how are you influencing these people? And they say one of the key elements of a good leader is a leader who is able to influence. Are you able to influence other people? Or are you influenced by them? As an ethical leader, since you've built a community with others, they believe in you, they have trust in you, you serve them, you're able to positively influence them towards a common goal. Hence, you should try to achieve this that's appropriate for yourself as well as the followers. And an ethical leader will always ensure, will always lay emphasis on trying to set goals by considering the goals and ambitions of everyone in the group or everyone in the team or organization to make sure that the set goals are acceptable to the teams. As you're setting your team goals, are they your own goals or have you gotten the buy-in of the other team members? Very important, because the moment you get the buy-in, then that's when now the communion comes in, because these people feel, yes, we are part of these goals. But if you set goals and you don't involve these people, what happens is they feel these goals belong to Irene. They're not our goals. They're utilitarianism goals, we don't understand them. So ensure that whatever you put in, whatever goals that you're setting, that they're acceptable to everyone. Okay? And once you do that, you'll be a very good team member. So what I want to ask each one of us, I know you've rated yourself on the main principles, the 5 principles that we've talked about. And for you, if you want to make it, or you want to develop yourself into a better ethical leader, then you need to embrace those, because it's more of a summary of what you really require as an ethical leader. And I'm sure maybe somebody will ask, so what are these behaviors? How do I build on this? Based on my ratings, what can I do to make it better? And I'm sure as we interact in this training, that will come out very strongly. So from there, we describe the various elements of character. In ethical leadership, I think there's 2 things that keep on popping up: behavior and character. And I'm sure we've heard about this word in so many ways and in so many places. However, we need to now ask ourselves, what does this word character mean with respect to ethical leadership? What does it mean? I'm sure as I'm talking about the character, something is coming up to your mind. But for consistency and in purposes of this training, character in ethical leadership means the inherent complex of attributes that determines a personal, moral, and ethical actions and reactions. Attributes that determine, the attributes that will determine you as a person, I as Irene, my moral and ethical actions and reactions. How do I react? How do I act? That is what we talk about when you're talking about character in ethical leadership. And the following are some of the key attributes of a good character. You can see them all over there. And what I want us to ask ourselves as we're going through this is, out of these key attributes of a good character, where do I fall? Am I inspiring? Do I inspire other people? We've heard people talk about inspirational leaders. I, as a leader, am I inspiring? Are people inspired by my actions? Are people inspired by my discussions? When I go there, I'm giving a report. Is that report inspiring, or is it a report that is very discouraging to the people? Yep. Obedience. Am I obedient? Am I loyal to what I need to do? How courageous are you as a leader? And courage, when you talk about courage, I'm not talking about the courage of fighting. I'm so courageous, I can fight everybody. It's a positive courageousness. Are you able to speak out? Even when something is unpopular, are you able to speak out? Of course, in a way that you respect people in dignity. Are you able to come out, discuss it? In a sitting up and in a meeting, are you able to bring up your point? Or you're the person who's always like, okay, yes, I agree with what Irene said. It's okay. I have nothing to say. Yep. Are you respectable? Do you respect people? Or you look at everybody and you just demean everyone that comes around you unless you're senior than them? Do people trust in you? And this is how character is defined. Are you tactful? You want to tell Irene something. How do you do it? You've had people who are very open, they say, me, things just come out of my mouth. It is, but is that being tactful? At times you say things and people are like, gosh, are you serious about what you've just said? Yeah. Are you responsible? What is your level of responsibility? When things don't go right, do you take accountability? Do you feel, yes, I'm responsible, I'm sorry, I think I should have done better, and I promise that I'm going to work on those areas? Or do you start the blame game? That, no, I was not in the whole of last week, so maybe some things may have gone wrong. Take responsibility. You're away the whole of last week. Did you delegate? Have you mentored? Have you empowered your team? Because this is what I tell leaders at times, and especially when you're in those meetings and you're there blame gaming. what you're doing is that you're showing your weaknesses in public. And I tell people, when things don't work, just say, I take accountability. Let me have a look at it, and maybe I can give you feedback next time. Don't go into details. It was Irene gave, because you see, the more you're talking, the more you're trying to portray how much you don't understand your team. Okay? So kindly, let's ensure we do that. How is your level of integrity? Your level of integrity. Are you your level of integrity? How? What can you measure it? Do people feel, who are you? You can easily weigh them. As far as you have something, you can easily, and you, of course, integrity and honesty go together, So how is your level of integrity? So these are some of the key attributes of a good character. Honesty. How honest are you? And we continue. How ethical are you? We're talking about ethics now. After this, you'll ask yourself, what is right and what is good? What is right for me? Is it right for everybody? Or I'm the person who feels everybody else is wrong, but I'm the right one? Okay. How competent are you in your area of expertise or in your area of responsibility? Are you sincere? Are you generous? Or are you generous with some people and some people you're not generous with? Yeah. How sincere are you? How unselfish? We know people are very selfish. It's like, this is mine, you need some paper clips and they'll not give you. Just because they know yesterday you didn't do something right for them. So you need to be unselfish in whatever you do. Treat everybody as you'd want to be treated. Be caring, dutiful. It's a call of duty. When you go to work, can you account for your time? Or can you say, like, 90% of the time I was on the internet, I've only given 10%. You've heard about the 80-20 rule in organizations whereby 80% of the staff may be doing what 20% can be doing. So are you among the 20% or among the 80%? Whereby the 20% we are told can be doing what the 80% are doing. Yet the 80% are doing what the 20% are doing. So can you imagine? So are you among the 80% or are you in the 20% or are you in the 80%? And we all strive to be in the 20% whereby we are very dutiful, we want to do our duty. As in whatever we are doing, our work is equivalent to what the other 80% are doing. Are we helpful? I need assistance. When I come to you, are you going to assist me or you're just going to send me? You've gone to some offices and you're taken round and round and round. And finally, you come back to the person where you started. And the question you want to ask yourself, that you can't ask them, because if you do that, maybe even what you want will not go through. And you just ask yourself, why did you have to take me round and round? And maybe if you'd had asked me another question, I would have told you what I require, and you'd have been able to help me. And because some people will come, even by the time you're finished, the sentence like, I needed, like, no, just talk to. I mean, what it is, it's me that's supposed to help you. How helpful are you? You find some people stranded, and you find someone just passing. I like when you go to some organizations and someone is passing, is like, hi, how are you? You seem like you're new. Can I help you? Which office are you looking for? There are people, unless you tell them, excuse me, can you help me? They won't. How helpful are you? Are you fair in what you do? We need to be fair. Are you modest? Always having a balancing act in everything that we do. It's good to be a good leader. It's good to be sincere. It's good to be unselfish, but let's also be modest. Don't overdo things. Because at times when you overdo things, it looks like it's very artificial. So let's be modest with how we deal with the people. You want to be empathetic. Yes, be empathetic, but in a modest, in a way that is very not out of, don't go out of the norm. Do it in a way that is within the acceptable ways of doing it. And of course, being ethical, I think I discussed about that. Let's be ethical. And ethical, in simple words, is knowing what is right, what is wrong, looking at our character, and looking at our behavior. And these are the attributes that we can have in terms we want to have good character. Then we have the 6 elements that make up the character of a person. These 6 elements form the 6 pillars upon which the character of a person stands. We've seen the attributes, ethical, integrity, but what are the pillars? And we're talking about a person, because I said it is also about a person. It is you as a leader. We're not talking about leaders, we're talking about leaders. So it is you as a person. And you're asking yourself as you're going through this training, where do I stand? Yeah. 1, trustworthiness, esteem, duty, candor, demeanor, caring. So we start with the first one. This is whereby we need to have the quality of being honest, being reliable, building a good image and reputation for oneself in the eyes of others, to be loyal to others, and to have the courage to do the right thing. In the eyes of others, perception, very important. You can believe that you're good, you're loyal, but what do people think about you? If today we are to have a 360-degree appraisal and people are asking about our character and behavior, will they say, I'm trustworthy? Yeah, but you can only earn that by being honest, by being reliable, and building a good image and reception of ourselves. It is up to you to build it. Okay? The next one is esteem. Esteem is whereby we encourage to treat others with respect, to tolerate the differences that are there. All of us have differences. And especially as a leader, at times you can have a very good point that you believe, or a strategy that you believe is going to help you in terms of achieving something. And when you present it to your team, they shut it down and like, no, I don't think it can work because of 1, 2, 3. Do you tolerate those differences? Or you're like, oh, you're trying to fight me. Let's see how far you can go. And you carry it, you know. Do you listen to understand their viewpoints? Because at times there are different ways of looking at things. And life has 2 sides. Maybe you looked it over your side. It is good to ensure that you also have the views of the others and their opinions. To be good-mannered, to be thoughtful of the other people's feelings. To not create menace for others, to handle anger, insults, and disagreements in a peaceful manner. Are you the leader that when things are not working, you have a conflict, there are 2 maybe colleagues who have their own issues? Instead of you bringing peace, you fuel. You're like, I knew it. If I should have even told them this, why didn't you tell them that? You should, what are you doing as a leader? As an ethical leader, you're supposed to treat others with respect, regardless. Even if Irene was wrong, treat me with respect. Tolerate that difference. I'm loud, tolerate me. And help me to be a better person. Like we talked about, being transformational. Because as a leader, your role is to develop other people, understand what they're saying. The leaders, when you talk about it, like, no, I think you didn't understand me. And I'm like, can I explain myself? You don't let people talk. And maybe, and I tell people, especially if you're giving something or a talk or a presentation, maybe you want people to buy into your strategy. And you don't even allow people to talk. You're like, no, you wait. Whatever you're asking, the answers are there. Trust me, you know what you have. Listen to them. Because you don't know what they have. Maybe what they have, they'll say something like, wow, by the way, that makes sense. So learn to listen. And also be thoughtful about other people's feelings. When you're giving them feedback, especially when it's negative feedback, how are you doing it? Are you doing it in the way that they feel developed, or are you destroying them? Because feedback can either build or destroy. So the way you give feedback, the way you treat people, are you building them or are you destroying them? And as a good ethical leader, that is one of the things that we need to ask ourselves. Do you build this person or are you destroying them? And you can destroy somebody's esteem by just talking to them. But by telling them, you shut up. I mean, you're always talking and saying the wrong things. Trust me. What have you done to that person? Okay? Let's ensure whatever you do, in case it's about disagreements, we are doing it in a peaceful manner. The other one is on our duty. It means be responsible in whatever you do, to always try to deliver your best. Have self-control. Be self-restraining to think before you act, and be answerable to your choices or for your choices. One of the challenges that we face, we as leaders, is at times things get haywire, and we lose our control. It is natural, like I said, it's good to be a human being, but how do you manage it? And the moment you realize, the self-awareness we're talking about, the moment you realize I've lost control, what do you do? How quick do you come back? Or do you continue, you've lost it and you realize, oh my goodness, I've lost it. And instead of building up or coming back to reality, you continue. Yeah, and that's you're told, try as much as possible to think before you act. At times you find people doing things and you're like, you can't believe what is happening. How do you act? Because like we said, ethical leadership is about people perceive you, perception. It's like, they start talking yesterday, the founders doing this. You know what they did? Trust me, even if that is not your character, even if you try to change, they will always remember that perception. So think before you act. Because at times you may act and it may be too late to react. And that's why if you think before you act, you'll always be answerable of your choices. Since I thought about it, whatever I do, then I'm answerable. And if somebody comes and questions me and say, Irene, why did you act like that? I'm like, I had to do that because if I didn't do that, 1, 2, 3, and 4 would have happened. If I didn't do that, this and this. You are answerable to your choices. Don't start giving examples or excuses that no. Explain and justify why you did that. And where you feel maybe things didn't go right, it's always good to say, maybe next time I should have taken my time before I acted. Always be ready to admit to your mistakes. And that's what you're saying, you're answerable. You've made it, it didn't work well, then you're answerable for that choice. The fourth one, this is a quality of, there's a cadre, that's the quality of being fair, to follow the rules, to share, be open-minded, to understand and listen to others, to not take benefit of others and not to blame others. As a leader, are you fair? Do you follow the rules? You're always the last person to come to work, you're always late, but you're the first person to write memos saying people should be on time. Yeah. Do you listen to others? To not take benefit of others and to blame others, to not blame others. Do you take responsibility? When things go wrong, you blame everybody on your team apart from you, yet you're the team leader. Okay? Demeanor. This is a good way in which a person behaves towards other people. And you're all encouraged to be good citizens, to work together with other people to make your community a good, better place. Therefore, you're supposed to collaborate in community affairs, to be good neighbors, obey laws, and respect authority. Are you the leader who every day there's some debt collectors in the office looking for you? Every time there's something happening that is not right on TV, you're seeing someone like, oh, I think I work with this colleague. Do you obey laws and respect authority? Even in the office, you can't, they know it all. You don't, because authority is there. And even, I tell people, even the big book, the Bible, actually says you should respect authority. So do you respect authority? And especially when people are, I find at times the challenge comes in, you find somebody maybe has grown within an organization and they become maybe a very senior person, and people whom you worked with at those lower levels, some of them are like, Irene is still the same Irene. Do you respect them? Because they're not at a position of authority. Respect it. Be a good citizen. We all know what it entails to be a good citizen. Are you a good citizen? Do you go throwing garbage everywhere? Yeah? Do you go talking to people badly and abusing everybody? Those are the elements of a good citizen. How you behave towards other people, regardless of your position. Behave in a way that is acceptable. So that is the element that you're talking about in terms of character. The other one is caring. And I think I really talked about this as you're looking at the ethic of caring. And what it means in this case is that we need to be kind, have empathy for others, care for others, show your appreciation, pardon others, and help people in need. And allow me to talk about how we show appreciation. I have been in forums where people believe that for you to appreciate somebody, it has to be monetary. No, Even a simple thank you. If a security personnel opens for you the door, just tell them thank you. Thank you for opening the door. I mean, just say thank you, say sorry. If somebody does something good, they give you a very good report of, wow, thank you, team, you did a wonderful. This quarter you achieved. It doesn't have to be monetary. When you see somebody like, hi, good morning, how was your day? How was your lunch? You know, that is a sense of appreciation, because they're like, oh, they appreciate at least I had lunch. They appreciate at least it may have been good, you know. People feel good. Pardon others. Things will always not be good. When somebody does things that are not supposed to be good, do you pardon them? Or you keep on referring, somebody did something 5 years ago. And it's like, you know, there's a time you really did something that I can't forget. And it happened even maybe I was in primary school. Let's pardon people and move on. Because if you don't pardon others, what you're doing is like, you're still carrying that burden. It's like you're still carrying, you know, you have a mzigo and you add another mzigo on top. You really have the burdens for that day. But the fact that you're not pardoning others, you can imagine the kind of loads that you have, that you're carrying. So let's learn to pardon others and help people in need. And people in need is not just maybe, at times you may look at it like maybe financial need. It's even need in terms of guidance. I'm working on this report. I know you're very good on Excel. I know you're very good on making presentations. Kindly help me. That is an element of caring. So helping people in need is not just about financial, or maybe I've fallen, you help me waking up. It's about the small little things. At times you find somebody's carrying so many things, just help them. Can I help you carry your laptop? Can I help you? Let's help people in it, because that way people look at you and they're like, wow, this person has good behaviors. I mean, because if I'm working with you and I'm carrying like 1,000,001 things and you have nothing, you don't even ask yourself, myself, this person sure. Not that I want you to help me, but I think courtesy calls for it. So let's always be out on the lookout to help others. When people are stuck on issues, can I come in and tell you, by the way, there's a time I was stuck with that issue, and this is how I managed it. Let's be always ready to help other people. So now, having gone through those elements and the principles of good behaviors, I want us to have a real life example. And I want us to look in depth on one great man who lived, that is Abraham Lincoln. And I'm sure most of us have heard about him. And for those who have not heard about him, no worries. We're going to discuss him and have a look at what he did. And we ask ourselves, if tomorrow we are to describe an ethical leader, can you be picked up? Do you have the attributes? And if we don't have the attributes, what are you doing towards it? And I'm sure all of us seated in this e-learning forum, we've had leaders that we say, wow, that boss, I worked for such a boss. And somebody say, I'm who I am because of so-and-so. I wish I can be like so-and-so. So in this case, we want to look at Abraham Lincoln. And the question I want us to ask ourselves as we're going through this is that, can I be, or am I like him? And if not, there's always the area of improvement, and we're able to put in place mechanisms to ensure that we grow to that level of ethical leadership that is acceptable. So purposes of introduction, because maybe not all of us know who Abraham is. He's a renowned American president who was not only a great leader, but was also a great ethical leader. He was born in February 12th, 1809, and he was the 16th president of the United States of America. His tenure lasted from March 1861 to April 1865, when he was assassinated. To start with, his background is that he came from a very poor family and was a self-educated lawyer. He educated himself. You know that will where it said by, you find the gap, you want to be a good leader, but you don't have education. So what do? You educate yourself. Yep. As a president, he was able to successfully lead the US through its civil war. And we are told that this civil war was the greatest crisis that the US had seen on moral, constitutional, and political fronts. So what did Lincoln do? Because in this civil war, we are told one of the bloodiest wars that the United States has seen. There are many issues that are attributed to his presidency. And of course, as the president of the US, this was achieved through many great feats. So now these are the things that made him a great ethical leader. One, this is more of a case study. Now we started with the case study, so let's have a look at this. One, he abolished slavery. We all know what slavery is, so he was able, and for those who love history, I would encourage you to go and read about this great man, Abraham. For him to achieve this, he really had to do a lot to convince people, meetings, great things that he had to do, but he was able to achieve it. He got a lot of people who did not believe in it. People who are like, now when we abolish slavery, then what happens? Who's going to be working for us? But he stood by his grounds because he felt it was not a good thing to enslave people. He stood up against the idea of war and opposed the war with Mexico in 1846. So he said, no, I'm not going to participate in that. And as we all know, in the US, for this, the president, even in most countries, the president will be there. Anything that has, especially in war, he has to give the final word. He strengthened the federal government. He successfully led the US through the Civil War and hence preserved the Union. We have the United States of America because of this great man. He modernized the economy of the US through establishing many banks, constructing many canals and railroads, revising the tariffs to encourage industrialization. You can imagine after abolishing slavery, there must have been so much in terms of the economy that may have been affected because one, people believe the slaves were doing everything. But for him to ensure that the economy hasn't been affected, that there is continuity, what did he do? He established banks, yeah, and did things that worked for the community or worked for the country. Abraham Lincoln, and I think this is one thing that we also need to think about it as we are going through this training, is that he's quoted as having said that character is like a tree and repetition like its shadow. The shadow is what we think of it, and the tree is a real thing. So, and I want us to pause and ask ourselves, if I'm a tree and my shadow, who am I? The shadow is what we think of it. What do you think about that tree? In this case, like not for me, I'll be thinking about me as Irene. What does this tree called Irene? What is its shadow? Because the shadow is a tree, right? So how is this tree? And because in his belief in this statement, he believed that by thinking like that, it made him build his personality. Therefore, he was able to have high moral standards. His honesty was of high level. His ethics and integrity were never compromised at any time as a president. And you can imagine, as a president, he has all the authority. In fact, they say because of his honesty and his ethics, they even nicknamed him as a honest Abe. And this was due to his ethics and moral values, apart from being a great leader. And the question I want to pose to us is, today as a tree that we are, as a people that we are, as the leaders that we are, if people were to nickname us based on our leadership, what nickname would they give to us? Will they call us the shouting Irene, the honest Irene, the ethical Irene, the integrity Irene? Or what name? I don't want to use negative names because I like using positive names. So that is a question that we need to ask ourselves. He also had great willpower and also a great power of expression. You know, when you have the willpower, you want the best. Therefore, you're going to do everything within your means to ensure that you express it in the best way possible. Lincoln had the remarkable capability of sticking to his principles with great clarity of thought. And when we're having this example is, we've gone through the theory, but now we're looking at a person. You know, you may be like, these things, they sound so well. How possible is it? But now we're looking at a person who was able to embrace ethical leadership. He stuck to his principles. We talked about these principles with great clarity and thought, clarity of thought. Are we clear about what you want? Are we clear about our principles? Lincoln set a good example for national moral conduct and of the relationship between politics and morality. Politics has to be there, but how do you get that balance? Even in our offices, we are told politics has to be there. We have organizational politics. We have politics even in our own house. And you have to decide which parliament it is. We are getting to that festivity period. There'll be politics in our houses. But for some people want this, some people want that, some people want us to go this place. I mean, that's politics. And you find out times when you have, maybe based on how the family members are constituted, there are those who can decide to gang with one member. That is politics. So politics is everywhere. It starts from the house. And maybe since you're the financier, there's a way. I was telling somebody, I think the other day we were making fun, and one of my family member called me, and immediately they sent me something very nice. You know, this WhatsApp things that you send. And I just laughed, and they said, like, why are you laughing? So it's like, are they trying to get something from you? Like, maybe they need some money. So I'm like, why are you saying that? Because you know, for my children, they want something. That's how they approach me. That is politics. So politics is everywhere, my friends. Yeah, but how do you balance that the politics in the house, in the community, in the office, how do you balance this to ensure that you don't compromise your ethics? Lincoln was able to balance that. And as a president, you can imagine, he constantly tried to raise his conduct to match his high-rising moral standards, leading by example. You want people to be of high integrity, yet your integrity is at question. You want to be very good in terms of responsibility. You never take responsibility of anything. When things go wrong, you're very good at blaming people. You want people to be good timekeepers. You're always the last to come in and the first to leave. And it's every day from Monday to Monday. Yeah. You want your team to have a high level of moral standards, yet your moral standards are very questionable. Every time there's a scandal in the organization, your name has to appear. You know, those scandals, any kind of scandal, you know, there will always be those scandals and rumors. You know, I tell people, whenever you hear a rumor, there's some truth in it. But every rumor that comes out, and especially, of course, the negative rumors, your name comes up. What are your moral standards? Lincoln ensured that his moral standards matched what he wanted to, what he was preaching. Preaching water and drinking water, but not preaching water and taking wine. People of the United States, including members of Lincoln's cabinet, knew that Lincoln was not a great man, but was also a good man due to his ethics and moral values. Because the moment you are consistent with your ethical practices, your characters, the attributes of characters, you've seen them. The moment you're consistent, people get to know. And you'll even hear people saying, that one, their level of integrity is very high. Even in our country, at times when we evaluate our leadership, you hear people saying that one cannot be compromised. Their level of integrity is very high. But you hear some people saying, that one, I don't know. I don't even know it's going to be. Because already their moral standards are questionable. But for Lincoln, even the people themselves, his cabinet knew it. And so what happens is the moment you're very consistent with your practices, people know you're transparent. People know you don't discriminate. Nobody will come and tell you things that don't work, because they know if I go to Irene with something that I don't have facts, it's not going to go through. But if they know you're biased in your decision making, they'll come and tell you things. So Lincoln, everybody, even the cabinet members, knew that you cannot compromise his moral standards and his ethics. And that is what all of us aspire to be in terms of being ethical leaders. And that's why we are here today. That this training is going to enable us to be real ethical in what we do and drive and uphold our moral values at our work areas. Whereas when anybody looks at us, they're like, wow, that is a person of high integrity. You cannot compromise them. You've had situations about something, you go and talk to her, maybe at a kuskiza. You guys, this, especially in recruitment, it's very clear. The recruitment process is there. It has well been defined. You've gone through the process, but because somebody has their interest, maybe they even want to push somebody who was even the last to become, and someone will be like, trust me, if it is Irene or it was Lucy or it was recruiter X who was doing it, they cannot. If you did not follow process, if they did not qualify, tell them to try next time. But the moment you open up a gap, you allow to tell people, the moment you set precedents, it becomes very difficult to maintain it. So for one who wants to be, for us, for I who want to be a good ethical leader, I have to be consistent. Let me not compromise, because the moment I compromise, tomorrow somebody will use that as a tool to break me down. Okay? Lincoln's character was such that he put himself in the other person's shoes, understood what the other person was feeling, understood the other person's fears, motives, and desires. He went out of his way to ensure that he was very empathetic. He would always put himself, imagine as a president, he would humble himself. He had that humility of trying to internalize. And maybe that's why he really fought. Or he was one very vocal in terms of abolishing the slavery, because he would want to imagine the slaves, what they had to go through, the kind of treatment that they were getting, the kind of fears that they had, the kind of motives that the people who were enslaving them had. And that's where he was able to come in and drive and say, this cannot go on. And was able to be very vocal in terms of abolishing the slavery. He respected all individuals as equal. Lincoln never disrespected the people around him, even his rivals. What do we do to our rivals as leaders? If you're my rival and you're in my midst, I'll ensure that even if I'm making a presentation and I'm asking people to give comments, I will not even mention your name. I'll ensure that everybody knows that you're out of place. I'll actually make you know that you're out of place. If I come and I'm greeting people, we've seen some instances where people come, I greet everyone and I can't greet you. And I'm like, hi, everyone. And I tell people, if you feel Irene is in that midst and you don't want to greet me, just come and say, hi, everybody, but not handshake people. Because if you are going to handshake people, then you don't handshake me, then it's obvious that we have an issue, I'm your rival. So respect all individuals as equal, regardless of everything. And that's what we are told, let's respect people's opinions, different, and especially when they're different opinions, because that is where the rivalry comes. Because I'm like, you don't believe in what? You don't believe in me, you don't believe in what I'm saying. But for Lincoln, he respected everybody and treated them as equals. He strived to get his rivals on his side and even made them members of his cabinet. Imagine, people who can make you, who can break your leadership, but he was humble enough to make them members of his cabinet. How many times can you as a leader sit with your rival? Tomorrow there's a big position that you're looking to fill in internally. Can you recommend your rivals? Yep. Respecting people. But how do you do? You're told, there's a saying that says, keep your enemies close. Because your enemies, as long as we can destroy you, your friends, you can manage them. However, again, you're told, so how do you balance? Yeah. Lincoln never lost sight of the harsh realities of politics in spite of striking on his high moral standards and ethics. He worked with a great level of composure and diplomacy with all the people around him. He knew their challenges. Even for us as leaders, we have challenges. You don't want to be discriminative, but the community at times, there are a lot of challenges that come with it. But how do you manage yourself? Do you ignore those things? No, don't ignore them. Because you want to be ethical, so everything else is irrelevant? No, you can't. Never lose sight of the harsh realities of politics Like I said, politics are everywhere. Even in our houses, we have politics. In our communities, we have politics. In organizations, we have politics. You are ethical, but don't lose sight. Because the moment you lose sight, trust me, you'll find yourself on your own. Because people will they may buy into the politics. So what he did not lose sight of those politics. He worked with great level of composure. I'm sure you've found yourself in situations whereby you're seated with somebody and you know so well, maybe the kind of things that they've said about you. And things that if you're to handle it the natural way or the unethical way, he'll be on the floor because you'll be fighting. But you're seated in the same meeting. You're seated in the same forum. You have to interact with them. What do you do? What did Lincoln do? Lincoln ensured that he did that with a great level of composure and diplomacy. Just have composure, be diplomatic. Because at the end of the day, things have to move. And whatever issues you have, those are issues, yes, you can't ignore them. But at the end of the day, you're expected to do something. So always ensure that you handle those things with great level of composure and diplomacy. He told the world that a great politician and leader need not to be immoral and unethical. Who says that for you to be a leader, for you to be a political leader, you have to be moral? For you to make it, you have to be moral. And at times I like listening to some of, especially when we have the interviews that are online or on air through the media, especially for these very, very senior positions, like for our cabinet secretaries, for our public, for our principal secretaries, at times with the parliament, maybe they're interrogating a certain CEO. And at times I listen to the kind of questions that are being asked and the way people respond, and I'm like, wow, that is a person of wisdom, you know? Because at times they'll ask you questions to push you to just admit how that for you to be a great politician, you have to be moral. But God gives them wisdom. Yeah. And that is a wisdom that we seek as we undertake this training, whereby we want to believe that regardless of all the politics that are there, we still can be ethical. Because Lincoln was able to do it. And help people understand that qualities of being a great politician can also coexist with other great qualities such as decency, kindness, compassion, honesty, sensitivity, empathy, ethics, moral values, and many others. And I think we've discussed most of those qualities. Yeah. So it is possible, my dear colleagues, it is possible for you to be a great leader and not be moral or unethical. Because we have seen those ones who have made it. Of course, you may not be very popular, but what will happen is the moment people know that this is Irene, you cannot compromise Irene, then they start singing you, they start dancing to your dance. And then just think about a dance. When you start and you want to do a group dance, when you start, the steps are difficult. You're then sitting the people to dance. They'll start the first day, they don't know how the steps are. Some will be dancing with their left legs, others are dancing with their right legs. You know, by day 2, you're like, no, let's dance with the right leg. And they're like, by the way, we have to ensure that we get to understand this dance. By the time you're done with the training, everybody understands the dance and you all dance. So how have you danced in terms of your leadership? How is my dance? Because the moment they know my dance is for an ethical leader, they're going to practice and fit into that dance because Lincoln was able to do that. It does not matter that, you know, being as a CEO, you know, here there's some people, especially whereby you have these approvals. And it is a must, you have to look for something to return it back, you know. Yes, maybe that is a practice, but really, is it right? Somebody has gone out their way, they've done everything, but just because you want to show that you're a leader, you have to feel me, I have to take you back and forth. No, you can be a great leader, whether in a political area, in a political environment, in a community that does not embrace all ethics or moral practices, you still can, because the moment you're consistent, people will start following you and people will start believing in you, and maybe you'll be the change agent, because they'll be like, wow, you mean it is possible? And somebody else will look at you and say, wow, so and so managed it. Even me, I'm going to manage it. And you become the change agent and you build more people, you empower more people. Yeah, you develop more ethical leaders. So don't say that wherever I am, things can't work. Start in a small way. And always know that it's one day at a time. You cannot achieve all what we've gone through and what we'll go through tomorrow in a day. It is one day at a time, one day at a time. Today you do an act of kindness, you're like, wow, it can work, it's acceptable. Tomorrow you do something. So one day at a time. And I believe with that, you're going to achieve to be that great leader that would all aspire to be. Lincoln was a self-educated lawyer. He came from a poor family. Yet as a president, he strived to shape and improve himself as a writer, moral agent, political speaker, and a statesman. Let not our past define our future. Our past was there for a purpose, but our future, we have to define it. We are the drivers of our future. Let's not just say, I came from a polygamous family, so I have to be, no, that is your past. So what do you want with your future? Do you want to be that ethical leader? Then work for it. Lincoln, regardless of him coming from a poor family, he was able to educate himself to become a very renowned lawyer. He's a writer. There are so many writings on him. He was a moral agent, politician, speaker, and statesman. Imagine, from a poor person. So from a poor family. So the onus is on us to drive our progress, to drive our growth. Lincoln used the best capabilities of his rivals to lead the US to success in the time of crisis of the Civil War. Yeah. His rivals were already part of his cabinet. So he got to master them. He got to know what is happening. But the moment you put your rival away from where you are, what happens? They continue crafting things. So Lincoln took advantage of that and was able to use that for him to be able to lead US to a success in time of crisis, because we're all on the same table. You're the one who is fighting the economy. What can we do? You're the one who is bringing this. What can we do? So always put your rivals and know what is going on and what is happening. Lincoln used both his moral and intellectual capabilities to overcome one of the greatest issues of US at that time, which was slavery. His moral, because he's put himself into the shoes of those slaves and imagine what was happening. Then now he matched with his intellectual capabilities. He was an educated lawyer. He knew about the human rights. So he was able to marry the two and was able to bring to an end the slavery. He always tried to understand other people's points of view and tried to reach consensus without neglecting the other party and without hostility. When you bring up a strategy and people don't believe with it, some people believe, some others don't believe with it, and people are now even like almost it's a fight. How do you bring around consensus? How democratic are you? Or you do decide because people can't agree on something, I am the one who brought it, it's going to be my way. How do you do it to ensure that you don't neglect anyone that you are dealing with, and without being hostile? Without not telling people, no, you don't support me, and not tomorrow you're like, yesterday I brought a policy, you didn't support it, so today, please, I don't need you to comment on this. You can still achieve the same by trying to get a consensus, by selling. If it doesn't work out today, go and re-energize yourself, go and rethink and ask yourself, what did I do? How could I have done different? Because the moment you don't do that, it becomes crazy. And I can give you a very good example. There's a time I was trying to sell a policy. And we know in this time of COVID, these online things have really come to make life really easy and be able to really catch a big number of people at a given point. So I decided that instead of having a face-to-face introduction, I'm going to do an online. So I set up a meeting and there I was. And I was so sure this is the best thing that has ever happened. My friends, I can tell you, when I started, of course, I made an introduction and like more presenters will say, it's like, kindly allow me to present, but should you have an issue, just ask and I'm going to respond. And the policy that I was trying to put in place, the slides that I had prepared, I had 9 slides. I remember very well. So when I did the first slide, was for introduction. The first slide, of course, at my introduction, I got a few questions, which I responded, but immediately I just knew at this point, I may not go far. But the time I was getting to the second slide, I think I was almost like 15 minutes down, and I told them I just need 30 minutes of their time. I take them through the policy. By the time I was on my third slide, everybody, all the hands were up. And I just knew at this rate, I was not getting anywhere. And I was like, if I continue with this spirit, then this policy is going to be shut down. So very quickly, I just told them, I think I'd requested for you 30 minutes, but it seems time is getting on and we will not be able to cover everything. Could I kindly request that I share with all of you this presentation, then I can reschedule. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get time and I'll come to each one of you, try to explain to you, then we can have a collective thing. They're like, oh yeah, that's okay. And the session, we call it off within 15 minutes. And when I sat back and I told myself, what did I do wrong? And one thing that came up is that, one, I believed in this, but I had not gotten the buy-in from the other people. And by lack of that buy-in, that's why they really fought it, you know, and it was real. If I remember after that presentation, the 3 slides, of course, you know, you always have your cheerleaders in everything that you do. There are those who be like, hey, Irene, hey, yo, hey, Apple, ilikuwa kali, you know. And of course, you know, these things, there will always be those politics. Trust me, after that, I made a decision that I didn't get the buy-in, and I made a deliberate decision to talk to all of them. And I told them, you know what? I'm sorry, I think I should have first come to you and, you know, I really had to, with a lot of humility, to talk to them and explain to them what I wanted to achieve and everything. Because I needed the buy-in of the management for us to be able to now start whatever I was recommending. And I got the buy-in. So when I agreed and we agreed on when you're going to have the next session on the policy, you won't believe it. I went through the 9 slides without a single interruption. And when I was done, of course, we needed to agree and take a vote as do we continue? Is this a policy that is going to help build our values or build our value system and everything? And I had anonymous, everybody voted for a yes. And I asked myself, if I'd done this the first time, I would be feeling so well, you know? And that is what I'm saying, but you try to understand everybody for you to reach a consensus. When things don't work, just say yes. Appa, I need to re-strategize. Don't give up on something that you believe in. Because I'm sure like even Lincoln was trying to tell people about the slave trade. People did not believe that it could come to an end. But don't give up. You continue looking for a consensus, even with the people who are rivals, people who don't believe, people who always want to fight you. And that way you're going to be able to achieve what you needed. Lincoln was also very open and expressive with everyone and worked together with others to enhance interpersonal work relationships, to jointly make tough decisions, resolve emotional conflicts, and negotiate sensitive issues. He was open and he was expressive with everyone. You know, he worked with everybody. He did not come and say, today I'm going to do this. He's not like me who came I want to just sell a policy. I have not even discussed it with anybody apart from my supervisor. And I think the management is going to own it. Work with everybody, because that is the only way you're able to build on your interpersonal relationships. Hence, from that, you can see that Abraham Lincoln was a great ethical leader, and his ethics, honesty, character, conduct helped him to deal with the strong egos of the men in his cabinet and win the hearts of the people of America, because everybody has an ego. So you have to work around people's egos and people that you serve so that you can win their hearts and they can support you in everything that you do. Because I tell people, even if you're the great team leader, you're great because of your team members. And whatever achievement is there, it is not your achievement. It's supposed to be the achievement of the team. So my dear colleagues, my dear people, as we undertake this training, I thought it was good for us to just have an example of somebody who has embraced ethical leadership and it has worked. And as we close, it's for us to ask ourselves, what can we do so that we can be good leaders who are ethical, whose morals are not compromised, whose behaviors are good, and whereby we lead by examples and be able to sell and drive the values that have been entrusted onto us. So now I'll open it. Those are the sessions that we were to do for today. The training was to go up to around 11:30. I know it's now 11:20. So I thought it's fair that we cover that for day one. Like I showed you the breakdown in terms of what you're going to do for day one and what you're going to do for day two. And for those who maybe came in a little bit late, is that these are the objectives that we had. And we've done the objectives up to elements of character. That's why we're looking at Abraham Lincoln as an example of a person who has been able to embrace that. So now I want to leave the 10 minutes for questions or any clarifications that you may want, so that I'll be able to respond. And like I said, we are learning from each other. So I now open it up to you in case there's anybody with a question, any clarification that they would want, I'll be more than willing to respond. Over to you guys. You can type it on the chat. Thank you, Daniel. Daniel says that was a nice presentation by you, Erin. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate. Thanks, and I beg to leave till tomorrow. That's okay, Daniel. You're allowed. Let's meet tomorrow at 8:30. Like I said, like today we started exactly at 8:30. So kindly at 8:30, the most I can give is a minute. So at 8:31, 8:32, we'll kickstart the training. So Daniel, thank you so much. Then we'll see you tomorrow. Any question? Any other person with a question? Let me stop sharing so at least I can see who is raising their hands. Yes, I can see Moeni, your hand is up. Yes, Moeni. Unmute yourself. Okay. Thank you so much. Khadija, yes, mine is also a vote of thanks. Well appreciated. We appreciate that. Our kids have very well elaborated. Thank you, Erin. Most appreciated. I thank you all. Also for your participation, because if you're not part of this setup, then I'll not have the psych or the motivation. So thank you so much, everyone. So in case there is no question, anyone with a question before I lock out everyone? Okay, then in case there's no question for today, so we can say that we're done for today, guys. Thank you so much. Looking forward for tomorrow. Let's kindly be punctual at 8:30. That's when we're gonna start the training. And I want to wish you a wonderful day. Be good. And let us start embracing the spirit of being good ethical leaders. Thank you, and God bless you, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.